So after 1 year on the job, new manager Harrison S. Armstrong took England's oldest professional club in Notts County and got him promoted to the EFL League One by winning the League Two title outright. Problem is, his star striker in Macaulay Langstaff now wants out of the team entirely.
Cool.
Langstaff scored a total of 44 goals last season across all competitions, and he felt ready to move on to his next big challenge in his footballing career. Armstrong sort of chose to ignore his plight entirely and refused to put him up on the transfer market. But it wasn't without reason. Langstaff's agent kept telling him that there was no outright interest in the man's services from elsewhere. But even with all of this chaos, Notts County had their return season to League One, and with it, they were going to need some reinforcements. The problem was, the budget was pretty tight. So to start, Armstrong took a list of prospects that were released by bigger clubs such as Arsenal at the tail end of last season and brought them on trials, then ended up signing about 8 to 9 of them in total.
NANI?!
Armstrong did get forced to make some moves to help the starting lineup due to David McGoldrick deciding to retire during the offseason. So they shipped out Aidan Stone, got keeper Max Thompson on a free transfer, renewed the loan on Leo Furhelda, and loaned in a pair of players, striker Dane Scarlett and goalkeeper Owen Goodman.
Let's get this show on the road.
Their first game of the League One season came against Leyton Orient and they drew it 1-1. But much like last year, this would lead right into the first round of the Carabao Cup, where they drew yet another EFL Championship team as their opponent. This time, it was Millwall. Much like last year's first round of the Carabao, it took late game heroics, this time from loanee Dane Scarlett, in order to bring the game to penalty kicks. A Goodman save and a Chickson goal in the 5th round ensured that Notts slayed yet another higher tier club in this particular competition. They would yet again be paired with another championship club in the 2nd round. This time, it'd be Blackburn Rovers. But back onto League One, the discontent from the Langstaff situation did lead to a less than stellar performance as a 3-2 defeat to Reading followed, but thankfully, bounce-back performances and ones against Portsmouth on the road, Huddersfield and Gillingham at Meadow Lane, and an absolute trouncing of Blackburn in the cup match, featuring a Langstaff hat-trick, capped off August on a positive note. So of course, the Carabao Cup rains on their parade yet again by pairing them against Liverpool for the 3rd round.
Wow.
However, this meant the transfer window deadline was here, and with it, Armstrong finally conceded that he was ready to let Macaulay Langstaff go. The club couldn't generate the interest in his services, so the gaffer encouraged the main man and his agent to take a more active role in finding a new team. They agreed, and then they had to do the transfer window deadline.
Many unbearable hours later.
Yeah, nothing happened. Not a single call, not an inquiry, nothing. The only calls that happened were from Notts County picking up defender Dino Simu on a free transfer before the deadline window closed. So Armstrong told the press that Langstaff needed to be patient in that until that move happened, he was a Notts County player. Langstaff did not appreciate the public slight.
But you can't do this to me.
September started off well at first, and then descended into mayhem with 3 straight losses to cap it off against Bolton Wanderers, Wigan Athletic, and seeing late game heroics to tie it up against Liverpool in the Carabao Cup's 3rd round go to waste as Langstaff and Scarlett, their best strikers, bottling it on penalty kicks. But hey, that meant they could focus on the important things, like the Pizza Cup.
Better ingredients, better pizza, better better money, my clothes better, my shoes better, I work harder. Caesars, Domino's.
Delving into the free transfer market before the restricted window closed, Armstrong signed attacking midfielder Dylan Chumbos in early October, who'd been a youth product of Saint-Etienne, and allotted one of their ESC places to get him signed on, finally getting the team something close to a McGoldrick replacement. Also, it was around this time that Burton Albion's manager decided to call Notts County a bit boring. You know, Notts County, a team that had scored 112 goals last year and were in the top 3 of goals scored thus far with 18.
Slippery little bastard! I don't have time for this.
An offensive 4-3 slugfest against Burton later, Dan Crowley sealed a late game winner for the Magpies. Notts proceeded to put another 4 goals through Leicester's U21 team in the EFL Trophy group stage, and then they got absolutely demolished by Colchester at Meadow Lane. Someone out there has a sense of humor, because the day after that game, the FA Cup draw paired those teams together for the first round of the competition. That loss had an effect, as Notts would proceed to win 3 of their next 4 games to cap off October, while putting up quite a few goals in the process. But early November meant a very busy month with games every 3 to 4 days, and to start it off, it was the first round of the FA Cup. Much like last season, Notts County got a draw on the road and forced a replay at Meadow Lane, where it took some late-game heroics, but Macaulay Langstaff stubbornly took center stage with a long-distance rocket to guarantee them passage to the second round, where they'd face fellow promoted side Gillingham once again. Following the cup replay game, a Langstaff hat-trick with a 96-minute goal ensured Notts a key victory over Port Vale, which would then be followed by a brace against Morecambe in the EFL Trophy to prove he still had his scoring touch. The latter half of the month did not go as well, as Notts County drew against Peterborough, Bristol Rovers, and Carlisle, along with being shut out entirely by Lincoln City. Not the best results on the league side, but Notts County would thankfully cap off the month by beating Gillingham in the second round of the FA Cup. Their third round matchup would see them against Vanarama National South side Torquay United, who'd been making quite the run in the cup themselves thus far. Langstaff isn't angry anymore, and he wants to withdraw the transfer request to focus on being a part of the team? Was this Armstrong's plan all along?
Questions for later.
Either way, it's fantastic news for the club because they're gonna need their key striker to perform in a sort of Nottingham derby since the EFL Trophy second round paired them against Nottingham Forest's U21 team.
2 hours later.
Let us now firmly ignore the Pizza Cup, like everyone else does, since that game was a boring 0-0 draw and Notts County then bottled it on penalties. The Magpies would go on an unbeaten streak with wins and draws for the rest of the month to put them just outside the playoff places by a point or 2. That brought the team to January, which meant the transfer window was open, and don't you dare Plymouth Argyle. A draw against Shrewsbury is apparently enough to cause Spurs to pull the plug on the Dane Scarlet loan by recalling him. Not ideal, but Langstaff's late game heroics against a very game Torquay proves they won't miss Scarlet all that much. But their reward for that win is a 4th round matchup against Arsenal at the end of the month. It's around this time in which Irish striker Mipo Odubeko and fullback Travis Patterson are brought in on loan, and the team rolls for the remainder of January with a draw against Oxford United, wins against Crawley and Cambridge in the league, although the downside of that is an injury to Dylan Chambos for the next month. But to cap off the month, Notts County hangs tough in it against one of the most famous clubs in England, but they see their hopes and dreams in the FA Cup completely shattered by Arsenal in the 95th minute via a Jorginho goal. A bittersweet ending that only gets that much worse when Jody Jones gets injured during training just before the transfer window deadline.
That's rough, buddy.
Armstrong promptly brings in midfielder Lewis Bate on loan and attacking midfielder Omari Kellyman from Aston Villa to help fill in. Notts County promptly moves on to February, and they start by beating Wycombe on the road to make it 13 unbeaten before Rotherham finally ends the unbeaten streak. The remainder of the month ended up being inconsistent, with draws against Gillingham and Lincoln City, ones against Barnsley and Bolton, then a loss at the end of the month to Barnsley at home to still keep them in 7th place. 9 games were left in the season and only 3 points separated Notts County from playoff spots, so March was going to be crucial to their campaign.
It's gut check time.
The Magpies answered the call with a 3-1 win against Port Vale, and even with injuries to Kedwin Scott and Connell Rawlinson, they carried the momentum from the Port Vale win into the remainder of the month, as a returning Dylan Chambos scores the winning goal against Reading, followed by wins versus Leyton Orient, Huddersfield, and Portsmouth to make their way into 4th place in the League One table. The final 4 games of the season would see 1st through 6th place all fighting for the 2 automatic promotion spots and the playoffs beneath them, with Notts County having 2 key encounters against Oxford United and Rotherham in these last 4 games. But first, they'd handle business against Carlisle with a 4-0 thrashing that saw another Langstaff hat-trick. Then, a 1-1 draw against Oxford United followed that kept both teams at 82 points and just 3 away from Rotherham, who held on to 2nd place. After that, a tough defensive outing against Peterborough saw Notts come out with a 1-0 victory to guarantee a playoff spot and take things into the final day of the season for the last automatic promotion spot. Unfortunately for the Magpies, Rotherham had their number in the last game of the season and managed to beat them 3-1 to end League 1 in 2nd place and send Notts County to 4th place, where they now would have to fight for the EFL League 1 playoffs for the final promotion spot. Notts County would be drawn against Huddersfield Town, and the first leg would not be an easy one, as Kellyman got sent off in the 35th minute and Huddersfield basically played with an advantage for a majority of the game. But thankfully, Armstrong and the lads kept it to a 1-1 draw. In the second leg in Meadow Lane, it'd be a similar story with a 1-1 draw that led them to extra time. Both teams scored during extra time, but it would be a returning Kedwin Scott's goal in the 114th minute that would seal the deal in order to send the Magpies once again to Wembley Stadium with a chance for promotion on the line. They would meet Wigan Athletic there. Mipo Orubeko ended up with a twisted ankle during training leading up to that match, and most pundits predicted that Wigan Athletic would emerge victorious in this crucial game and punch their way into promotion.
It became personal with me.
Notts County's instructions were to shoot on sight at any given opportunity, and they did. Eventually, Macaulay Langstaff broke the dam with a goal in the 36th minute after a low cross from Jody Jones. Notts County would proceed to add on to it as a corner kick in the 47th minute found its mark, as Leo Fuerhelda headed it into the net. Wigan Athletic cut the deficit to 1, but it would be too little too late, as they would only get 2 more shots throughout the last stretch of the game, and Notts County was headed to the EFL Championship, winning promotion for the 2nd year straight. While their relationship started off rocky this year, Macaulay Langstaff yet again proved to be essential to the Notts County side as he scored 35 goals across all competitions, 26 of those goals in League 1, which led him to winning the Golden Boot Award for his efforts. Dan Crowley also deserves his flowers for an amazing season that saw him score 21 goals and get 11 assists as well, making him an easy pick for the fans as player of the season. Todd Kane also delivered hellfire and brimstone in a huge way with 17 assists from the wing. But knowing that they were now 1 tier away from the Premier League, Armstrong got proactive and negotiated a long-term contract with Macaulay Langstaff that would see him become the highest paid player at the club currently. Overall, the Magpies overachieved compared to initial predictions, but for Harrison Armstrong, 2 promotions down, 1 to go before reaching the biggest stage in world football.